Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Philanthropy. On today's episode, we are going to be covering holiday mental health and wellness with Celeste Boran-Fetch. So I have known Celeste for 10 years. I have taught at her studio. I think maybe it was a year or two that I worked there and taught some yoga classes, taught some meditation classes. And of course, our friendship has remained strong ever since. She is just such a knowledgeable, wonderful lady who really practices the yoga lifestyle and applies this, a lot of her social work teachings. I think they flow back and forth between her yoga classes and therapy, and she has her own counseling practice at a Tapestry Yoga Studio. And so, welcome, Celeste. I'm so excited to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jessica. It's so nice to be here. I'm really excited and a little nervous too, but yeah, I can't believe it's been 10 years that we've been friends. That's so lovely. I didn't realize how it's been that long, but it's just flowed so well in our friendship. So I'm really happy to be here with you, and it's an honor to be on your podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy that you came. So, for all the listeners, I've been trying to get Celeste on for a little while now, just because I know she has a wealth of knowledge and I know that she could talk on so many different wellness topics. So, we had a chat and I asked her, can you come on before Christmas? I would love to talk about suicide ideation and the struggle people have mentally around the holidays. And Celeste was like, hey, I have some more ideas with that. And so it branched into the episode that will be today. And we're going to cover a few different topics. So I'm very excited because I know that from applying her counseling background, we'll be able to help with a lot of the mental health struggles that people deal with during the holiday season. So that's why we're doing this right now, so we can put this episode out right away and hopefully help you. And you can share this episode with anybody you think would benefit from it. And I really think everybody will.
I hope so. Yeah, I put my heart into kind of preparing for today and brought a lot from some from my yoga practice, a lot from my counseling practice experience and my experience like sitting with human beings and witnessing their kind of suffering and pain, but also their joy and their triumphs and stuff too, and their healing. So yeah, I'm in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. I'm in Kostapananek, the meeting place it was known as, on Treaty 6 territory, and just happy to be here. My ancestors were settlers from Poland and Ukraine, so that's kind of my historical background and my heritage. Um, and yeah, I've been in human services since 2003. I'm a registered social worker, and I've worked all over in all kinds of different agencies and types of services. Worked in group homes, that is kind of how I got my start. Worked in corrections, community corrections. I worked with doing social development with the municipal government in Prince Albert way back in the day. That was so long ago. I've done some work in health also in the hospital, and then also doing mental health interventions alongside the police with the police and crisis team in Prince Albert. But the majority of my career was before my private practice was in education. That's kind of where my heart is. And Jessica, you being an educator too, I think we connect on those levels as well. I feel like so many of
Yeah.
my yeah, 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 and so many of my friends and family are teachers, and so being alongside teachers in the past, seeing what they dealt with day to day, really gave me a different perspective on things within the school system, and I think I try to apply that in my work now. And then, yeah, in 2020, November 2020, the studio was all closed down because of COVID. So it was like a little recording studio. We were recording a bunch of videos that we have online now. But that's when I opened my private counseling practice in town here. So it kind of took off right away, fortunately for me, and I'm honored to do that work. And I think a lot of people in the community know me and my works. I think that's kind of my reputation in that people knew that I was a good service provider and someone they could trust. So yeah, that took off in 2020, and I've been doing that ever since. I'm no longer a public servant. My heart was really there as doing that type of work in those different systems. But yeah, now I'm self-employed.
It's amazing. And you have just such a big heart. And I know that your I guess your purpose has always been to help others and to help them take care of themselves, which is aligned so beautifully with this podcast because that's a lot of what I like to do too. But I know you have given your life to service and you have given yourself to community to make sure that people are taking care of their mental health, and also yoga in not just the asana part of it, but also the yoga lifestyle that goes with it, which I really love. And I know that you really embody all of that. So I'm really excited that you're here today and we're able to share some of the information that'll help all the people that could definitely use it during the holidays. And I know even for myself, you start thinking about all of the parties that you're going to go to, and there's a lot of gatherings, there's a lot of family time, and I think sometimes we become overwhelmed because if you're an introverted person, for instance, now you're suddenly thrust into social world for one thing, but also the messiness of our relationships with people. Now we're forced to spend quality time with people who we may not actually be getting along with right in this moment. And we know that. And we know that there's that obligation and we have to sit down with these people and we have to try and be civil. But now, you throw some alcohol into the mix because people are drinking and drinking for merriment maybe, but also as a coping mechanism. So, like, what are some ideas or strategies that you think would help people who are they're probably already in this situation or they're about to be in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. I think a huge thing is our boundaries. I think no is an answer. You don't even have to explain beyond that. Saying no is okay. You're allowed to say no to certain events and activities. You don't have to be a part of every single party, every gift exchange, every event, because there's a lot that goes on this time of year. I think a lot about some of my perinatal moms that I work with and moms with new babies because I do some of that teaching mom and baby yoga. And then also I have a lot of clients that are new moms as well right now. And I think about them having to like lug the baby, pack up the baby, bring the baby to all these different family events. And I've been really coaching some of the women that I work with, like, you don't have to go to every single event and maybe shift things, invite the family to see you. They can come see the baby. um, Also, even for people who are hosting, you don't have to cook the whole entire meal. Maybe make it a potluck and invite people to bring a dish. Well, oftentimes people will offer to bring things, so don't be afraid to like take them up on that. So I think boundaries around kind of saying no, asking for help, that type of thing can really create some kind of like a container for yourself where you're keeping yourself healthy in this time and not overextending.
Awesome. That I think sometimes people can, end up burning themselves out during the holidays. And so I think those are some really good, solid tips. What if you're
Mm-hmm.
going into the holidays and you know that you have some kind of mental, emotional struggle that you're dealing with right now, like grief or suicide ideation? What are some things that people who are experiencing those struggles right now, what could they do? What could help them?
I wanted to talk about both of those kind of separately. So maybe we'll start with like depression and suicide. In my practice, I've definitely seen a huge link between people who are depressed and having suicide ideation. I think sometimes it also can come with a lot of like just overwhelm as well. So some of the signs of depression that we might look for are like loss of interest in things, really extreme sadness, changes in like eating, appetite, changes in sleep. So maybe sleeping a lot or not sleeping at all. So those can be some of the warning signs. And then along with that can come thoughts of suicide, and that's suicide ideation. Um, I think that suicide is a really taboo topic. It's something people are kind of afraid to say the word. I remember when being in the school system and as students quite often would have things where they would say like, I want to die or I want to kill myself or things like that. And of course, being in the role that I was in the school, I would be the one supporting the student through that. But people are just afraid to talk about it. So there's a lot of stigma about it. People think if they say the word in front of people that it might like trigger something, and they might do something like that to themselves. I think just reducing some of the stigma around it and knowing that it's actually so much more common than you would think. I've experienced it so many times in my practice where people talk about that, and it's people on the outside who seem really happy and have things together and stuff, but deep down there might be some feelings of that, or again in those times of really overwhelm and kind of just big overwhelming feelings. So yeah, I think it's not necessarily in my experience with people sitting with them and having them disclose these types of things to me, it's not so much that they actually want to die, but they have this big pain or this big overwhelm, and they just want that to end. So it's not that they want themselves to end, their lives to end, that they want to die, but they want the overwhelm to end. So that's something I've really found. Yeah, so I think if you're feeling like that, definitely finding someone to talk to that you trust. Not everyone has someone, unfortunately. I hope people do. I hope people listening do, because we all need connection. We're wired for connection. But you can talk to a doctor, whether it's your family doctor or a doctor at a walk-in clinic if you don't have a family doctor, as many people don't, unfortunately. Also, talking to a counselor or a therapist, getting connected with someone. There's some public services. There's also private services like myself. And then there's also in Canada, just recently, we had a national suicide hotline or prevention hotline, but they revamped it, and the number is very simple. It's 988. So that's our suicide crisis helpline. They have a really great website too. It kind of explains things to people in crisis right now, or maybe if you're just thinking about having the ideations. And then it also has a section on if you know someone who is suffering or hurting. And it kind of goes over what to do in all those situations. Their number you can call or text, and it's open 24/7 and 365 days a year. So really important resource that we have here.
And it's confidential too, right?
Absolutely, yeah, completely confidential.
Thank you for sharing that information so that people can look into those. Even right now, as soon as the episode comes out, they can arm themselves with knowledge. I know when I was a principal of a high school, right before Christmas, we would often do that. We would give all of the kids any number that they could possibly need if they felt that they were going to be struggling during the holidays, and to have it, laminated and ready to go so that when that moment should strike, then, they knew who to call, they knew who to turn to. And so I think it's really important that people know where the resources are and how to find them. So thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, and people who are in immediate crisis, if you're like, I'm going to kill myself now, the suggestion there is to go to either your nearest emergency department or call 911 and get immediate help. That's not something to kind of wait on. And that's really scary for people. I think as soon as people realize, oh, I might have to go to the hospital, and then they think right away, I'm going to be admitted. But that's not necessarily the case. They'll assess your risk, whether it's a social worker, or sometimes there's psychiatric nurses that work in the departments, or maybe a psychiatrist sometimes too. But you might be like kind of pre-screened by those other professionals first. And then they'll decide, like, can we just create a safety plan for you? And can you go home with some supports and with some phone numbers and a plan usually to follow up with the people as well so that they come back. If they do deem you being a really high risk of suicide, then they may admit you then. But going to the hospital doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be admitted right away.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
What about somebody who is struggling with grief right now? Because I know that there's going to be a lot of people, the holidays can be so triggering, because if we've struggled this past year and unfortunately have lost somebody in our lives recently, then it's going to hit us even harder when we go through the holiday season. And maybe some of those things will still apply, the depression, the suicide ideation, because of what you mentioned, that they could be feeling a sense of overwhelm. And it doesn't necessarily mean that their life, they want to end their life, that they're just tired of that pain. But we know that grief is already a very overwhelming feeling. And so, how do we help people to get through that part? Because that is definitely going to impact somebody, even if it's not a recent death, even if it's somebody who we've lost 10 or 15 years ago, but maybe it was right around the holidays, or there was a strong core memory that linked to the holidays and makes it even harder. What kind of things could people do if they know that they're going to be grieving, or they suspect they
Hmm.
might?
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that one up. This is really near and dear to my heart because I have done some extra training in grief support of people, and one of my teachers is David Kessler, who people might know of. He's like a grief expert, I guess he calls himself. I don't love the word expert, but whatever, that's what he says. But he comes from a nursing background and did a lot of work in like hospice care, and he's written many, many books. You probably have heard of him if you have read any grief books. But I think, yeah, grieving the loss of a person, but I actually want to just expand that definition a little bit too, because I think grief is really underrated in our society. Underrated, and there's a lot of illiteracy around it, I think, too. But the underrated part, I think that it can be so many more things. It could be job loss, moving, divorce, pet loss, changes in relationships. So, and I even think of with myself right now, my kids are like young adults and they're all moving away, and so even experiencing grief of like our changing family. So I think it's definitely like loss of a person that we love, but I think it can be so much more than that. So I just wanted to kind of name that, recognize that might be grief that people are experiencing, and they might think, oh, this isn't grief, but it is. So just naming that. But yeah, some of the things to be aware of, just that to kind of welcome and invite all your feelings around grief in. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was one of the first people that kind of studied grief and taught about grief and learned about it. So she talks about like the five stages of grief. This was like way back in the day, but they are, yeah, so she was a really pioneer. But first of all, kind of denial and shock, anger, bargaining, sadness or depression, and acceptance. And before, the way grief used to be thought of back then, it was very linear. So it would just be like you're in that stage, and then you move to this stage, and then that stage, and so on. But since then, it's recognized that grief is more circular and more kind of maybe comes in like spirals of grief, where you're experiencing these feelings, you move through them, then maybe move on to one of the other feelings, and then it'll come back up again. Or the way a lot of the people I work with kind of describe it as waves of grief too. Um, so yeah, just again, kind of welcoming those in, doing our best to have the capacity for those emotions and recognizing that they're all normal. I don't love the word acceptance though. I want to speak to that a little bit. David Kessler was really good friends with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and they worked together, and he kind of expanded her work a little bit after she died. So he talks about meaning making. So acceptance, I think for that, like when it is a really significant loss, the loss of like a parent or a child or a partner or something like that, like that's not something I feel like people can really accept. Acceptance seems so final, and it's like, oh, okay, now I'm done grieving. But some of these types of grief, it's something that will just be with you forever, fortunately, because it means your love and your connection to them kind of lives on. So meaning making was kind of how I feel like David Kessler kind of expanded on that or changed that perception of that a little bit. So it's finding a way to kind of transform your grief is how he talks about it. So maybe it's recognizing the memories that you shared with that person. It could be finding ways to honor your loved one, turning your pain into purpose or service, maybe ways to continue their legacy. So meaning making, I think when people get to that part of their grief, it maybe is a little bit like acceptance, but more of a like, okay, I have a new normal, and also here's what I've done to transform my grief.
I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. I've never looked at it that way, of instead of considering acceptance, which does sound very final, like you've mentioned, but to, you know, instead consider it as meaning making, I think is so powerful, because to me, what I think when you say that is that we're finding ways to keep their memory alive, to keep them still a part of us.
Hmm.
And whereas acceptance is like, oh, I've neatly closed that chapter, I've closed that book. Whereas this is like, no, this person is still a very important part of my life, even if they're absent in the physical sense. And I think it probably, if you have more spiritual leanings, it might be a little bit easier to do the meaning making and the idea of keeping their spirit alive because you might feel that way. So I think it's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Hmm. And I actually have a real life example I wanted to share of that too. Unfortunately, I couldn't share any of my clients' information because of the confidentiality, but there is a woman who lives kind of locally ish around here. And I asked her permission to share about this, and she's pretty open about her story too. But her name is Brittany. So she has a little boy, and she was pregnant in 2005, yeah, this year, and her daughter was born, and she only lived 30 minutes and died of a rare chromosomal disease. Yeah, it's a very, very sad, very tragic story. But Brittany found a way to transform her grief in a really big way. So in Saskatchewan, there's an organization, I think they're in Saskatoon, called Empty Arms. So they support perinatal loss. So whether it's miscarriage or stillbirth or young children, young babies, or I'm not sure what age they go up to, but I believe like some toddler age or so. So they support families, and they have some groups, and they also will go to the hospital and take photos of the baby with you and do like handprints and things like that. That's the type of work that they're out there doing. So Brittany, in the fall, she had a community market in Shellbrook where she had a bunch of different vendors, and a bunch of the proceeds she donated to Empty Arms. So I think that's a really beautiful example of how she transformed her grief. She also recently wrote a book, and I bought it to work with my clients. So this is the book. It's called Turtles and Angel Wings, and she put by Callie's mom, because she kind of talks a lot about, she won't ever be able to really be recognized as Callie's mom. That was her daughter that died. So it's a way for her to kind of honor her daughter, still be Callie's mom. And then also the book is for siblings who have lost another sibling. So yeah, a really beautiful example of that, and a real life example that I just want to share.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's so powerful. And, you know, sending love and prayers to her. I feel so deeply moved just because I'm a mom, and I think that would
Mm-hmm.
be just really difficult and challenging to go through during the holiday season. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful she does that for other people, and recognizes that her grief is, of course, very individual to her, but there are also so many other people who have some kind of similar pain. And so I think this is a way to uplift and support those families who are struggling with the same thing. And so I think that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to Brittany for allowing me to share her story on this podcast too.
Absolutely.
So yeah, um, just normalizing that like grief in the holidays is going to be hard, that we all grieve in different ways. We all have our own unique grief journey, whether during the holidays or not. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was, I mentioned it earlier, but like kind of grief illiteracy. I feel like people, again, it's another taboo topic. So
Mm,
suicide, grief, when people are around grieving people, from my experience in sitting with the people that I support in their grief, a lot of people don't really know what to say. They
mm,
they say maybe platitudes, that just those kind of canned sayings that people use, like, oh, they're in a better place, or everything happens for a reason,
yes.
those types of things. And I think those phrases can almost do more harm than good. If you have said those in the past, judgment or shame, and hopefully you can learn some things today about what could be more helpful. But yeah, it's saying those things aren't really going to be helpful to people. I think it comes from a good place. It comes from a place of maybe wanting to take their pain away, or maybe the person not having the capacity to be with someone that's suffering so much. So I understand that. And in my practice and doing the work that I do, I've had opportunities to build my capacity to be with grieving people. So I understand that's not just like a common everyday thing that people have a skill and a, I don't know, calling. I guess it's probably my calling. So yeah, I think that things that people can do instead um, is just more witnessing the pain, witnessing the grief. So saying things maybe like, your loss is horrible. This loss is unfair. I see how hurt you are, and you are not alone. I think those are some
Mm.
things that just kind of reflecting back what you see instead of trying to take their pain away because you're not going to be able to.
I think that's really powerful, and thank you for sharing those ideas because I sympathize with the people who are saying those neatly packaged phrases that we've all heard, and I think it comes from a place of well-meaning, like you're suggesting, but I do think that oftentimes people don't know what to do in the awkwardness, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is in a vulnerable state and they have shared that moment with you, and now maybe you didn't see that coming, or you weren't prepared, you don't know what to do in awkward moments, I think it's just like something neat that they can say to kind of escape the awkwardness of that moment. And so I love that you're encouraging people to lean in more and just be more supportive. And I think that's where that term holding space comes in, that
Mm-hmm.
often people aren't really sure what it means to hold space. Do you have like a good way? I know that you kind of just described it, but when you hear the term holding space, if you could even elaborate on that so that people who are listening can get a better feel for what it means to hold space, because I think that's a skill that people don't recognize can really help somebody in those awkward moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for asking that, Jessica. To me, the biggest thing that I think of in holding space comes back to my somatic experiencing training and yoga as well. But presence, I think, is a really huge part of that. So your presence with that person, being able to just sit with them in their pain, with your own pain too, because you're probably going to be hurting if they're hurting. And again, not necessarily trying to change anything, just to be. So I think some of those yoga skills can really help us with that, using our breath, self-regulating in our own emotional capacity can really help with that. So yeah, I think that that presence is really important and just offering that. Some people may want it, some people may not, again, depending on their grieving journey. But I think that's something that we can really do that can go a long way. And we don't even necessarily have to say anything in those situations either.
Thank you for that. I
Mm.
think that would definitely help even for myself, those moments when that sort of thing happens, that I can be mindful and present and be in the moment and not be afraid of that moment. If that person wants to be there and they want to share, then I know for myself I want to support it. But I think what you just mentioned, that's really key, that sometimes people may not want to share. They may not want any more. It's their own healing journey, but I think it's good if you just say, "Hey, I'm here for you. If you ever
Yeah.
need to chat or you need support, I'm here for you. We don't have to talk about this right now, but or ever, if you have somebody else you want to talk to, but so that you know that I love you and I care, right?"
Yes. Yes. I love you and I care. But it can just be distilled down to that, really. Yeah. Some of the other ways I think we can help grieving people or other people around us who are grieving. One thing I've been really working on is also a kind of a canned saying, but like, let me know if you need anything, which is again very well meaning, comes from a good place and from good hearts. But I've been trying to shift that and be a little more specific about the types of help that I can offer because when people are grieving, and especially around this time, they're not really, their capacity is so low. Like they're just in survival mode. They're trying to get through the day. They're trying to even maybe get out of bed sometimes. So I've been trying to shift that and have specific offers of support. For example, hey, I'm out at the store right now. What do you need me to bring you? Or I'm making an extra lasagna. When can I drop it off? And being very kind of specific, intentional. So those are a couple of examples. I think people can kind of come up with some of their own too, but And I think that's the other thing, like doing things for people, I think can go a long way too. Right now we have tons of snow in Saskatchewan where we are. So shoveling someone's walk and maybe even just doing it before they even notice or don't even tell them you're going to do it. Um, yeah, dropping off food, things like that. Food always goes a long way. Food is my love language. So that's usually how
Me
I
too.
care for people. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But speaking of the love of food,
Yeah.
I would like to shift gears a little bit here. What about we're going to be living in a season of
Hmm.
overconsumption. So, I mean, I know my mom has been staying with me for a bit and she comes home and she has cookies and chocolates and everything that I never buy. And she's like, oh, look what we have. And I'm like, oh, great. We get to all be fat for the holidays. And she's like, oh, 'tis the season. And so there's a lot of meals, and I know personally as a yogi, the toll it takes on my body. I've been doing a lot of baking lately, and I'm starting to feel like a giant muffin from all of the baking.
I'm sure you're not alone in that.
So thinking about what are the things that, how can I not get disconnected? How can I stay in tune with my body? What are some things that might help if we're feeling like it has been a season of excess?
Hmm. Um, yeah, definitely. When I was preparing for this, I was thinking about that for sure and some of the other general challenges with the season. I think a lot of the yoga tools and somatic tools to help us regulate, be mindful, can really help with that type of thing. Just, taking a pause, taking a breath, and maybe noticing your body like, am I hungry? How does my body feel right now? And maybe you already feel stuffed and kind of gross from overeating. So just being able to like track those sensations in your body, which comes more from the somatic end of things. And I think the yoga part can kind of using mindfulness, using our breath to take a pause and notice. I think those things can go a long way and take a lot of practice, but it's doable.
Mm, I love that. And I think that would be something that would also be beneficial when we go to think about the stress that we might experience during the holidays, the anxiety, the feelings of, oh my gosh, I'm an introvert. I need to do all these extrovert things. And I think that that is really key, that you could do that maybe not even just with your diet and your physical cues of, oh my gosh, I've eaten too much, or maybe I haven't gotten enough sleep. I've been run
Mm-hmm.
ragged, but that you're noticing, okay, if I'm feeling super anxious in this moment, and I'm noticing that. I'm noticing maybe the physical cues or physiological cues. What are things that could help people if they're noticing, like mentally or emotionally, I'm just not okay in this moment? Do you have any ideas that could help
Hmm.
people with that?
Okay, yeah. A couple things that I was thinking about with this was around simplifying things. So I think people maybe don't have to make like five desserts and buy a present for like their mail carrier and dog groomer and everything. So thinking of ways to simplify, I think that's really important. Oh, yeah, I think with anxiety, I didn't touch on that as much, which is funny because I like live with anxiety. I have a lived experience of it
Mm,
and didn't even think about that topic very much with this. But I think definitely learning those self-regulation tools, emotional regulation, learning how to take a pause, learning how to take a breath. I think the other important thing with anxiety that I've seen in my practice with people, the more that someone, so say there's like a fear of something and someone avoids that, then in their brain, actually, it kind of reinforces the anxiety because they're like, oh, okay, good. I didn't go do that scary thing. So sometimes when it comes to like anxiety or like undiagnosed anxiety, it's actually like pushing through a little bit to do the thing that scares you in a gentle way with some tools. So again, those like self-regulation tools, maybe co-regulating with another person, like having a person that you go with maybe to the event. Making a plan can be really helpful too. And that plan might include what to do if you do get overwhelmed and need to leave. So I think those are some of the things that can help that end of things.
Those are great ideas. Thank you for sharing with that.
Yeah, there were some things about we talked a lot about how to help grieving people, but I want to speak a little bit more to what to do if you're the one grieving as well. So we did talk about kind of welcoming those feelings in, the meaning making, and like you said, it's the meaning making is kind of like a way to continue that relationship with the person. I think around the holidays, making a plan can be really important. So I've done that with clients where we've created a holiday grief plan. And I actually have a little worksheet of that. If anyone would find that helpful, I'm willing to email them a copy. So if that's possible, I'd be happy to share that resource with people. And David Kessler talks about having a plan. So you have your plan A, B, and C. So plan A looks like this, but knowing that you can change your mind. Maybe you go to the party, maybe you're not feeling that joyous or festive. Well, you're not. You're not feeling joyous and festive, but maybe it's really hard to be there. And so maybe you do need to leave early and take a takeout container of food with you. So having a plan, but being gentle with yourself around that plan, knowing that plans can change. And again, you're in your own unique grieve process. And so that can look like whatever you need it to look like in that moment. Being really gentle and compassionate with yourself around that.
I think that's really great. So that could be like plan A. Is there something like for plan B or plan C, or is that just very individual?
That would be, I think, yeah, very individual for the person to be like, okay, around specific events. So I think there's like the holiday grief plan that you can create and like the worksheet that I have. But then when you're thinking about specific events, what does that look like? And if you're in a family that's grieving, maybe you're talking about that as a family. Like what do we want to do this year? What traditions do we want to keep? What will be too much this year for us? How can we simplify? Things like that. And then, yeah, I think also, there might be ways that you want to honor your loved one, maybe by setting a place at the table for them or creating and eating their favorite meal, sharing memories of that person. One of the things that I've done with clients is making an ornament, especially with like young people that I work with. So we make like an ornament for the tree that honors the loved one. Sometimes making a donation in their name might be something that would feel helpful. So yeah, those are some things I think that if you're the grieving person, that might be helpful.
Thank you. I'm sorry. That was my fault. I jumped right ahead into oh my gosh. If I'm feeling fat, what do I do? And I cut off your great grieving information. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. We got to it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else, that maybe we haven't mentioned? I know we've covered quite a bit already. Oh, I guess there's something that I would like also, what about for people who may be struggling with like an addiction or something around the holidays? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and even in terms of like a general challenge for people, because I think there is so much more, again, the gatherings, the parties, and then hence a lot more alcohol involved. And unfortunately, I think alcohol is like just very normalized and sometimes like overconsumption of it. So that can definitely, with people who are in recovery, struggling with addiction currently, it can be very triggering for people and very challenging because they're putting themselves in these situations where there is more of that happening. Yeah, and alcohol is a depressant, so that can actually increase those feelings of depression and suicide when we're drinking. The other thing that happens when you are drinking, your inhibitions are down. So if you are having those suicidal thoughts, that's sometimes when people actually do take their lives. And maybe they were just they didn't actually really want that to happen, but because of the reduced inhibition and the means maybe, then that's when it can sometimes happen. So I think again, really planning can be a really important thing, and boundaries. So maybe you choose not to go to those things. When you're planning, maybe ask the host, will there be like options for mocktails? I think that's becoming more common because people are choosing like sober lifestyles, and which is really cool to see. So I think there's more recognition of that. If it's not something being offered by the host, maybe as the guest, you bring your own mocktails, ingredients, or something, or special drinks that'll make you kind of feel a part of things. So, yeah, those are a couple thoughts. And again, if you are struggling with these types of things, there is help out there. There's lots of AA groups in communities. In Prince Albert, we have, I think, a couple meetings a day. And then there's also online meetings too that you can join from anywhere. So those are kind of nice. And then it could be any time of day as well, because they're kind of happening all the time. And then locally here, and I think in most communities, there's like addiction services that are offered through public health or through with our health card. So if you're needing to like talk to someone more about your alcohol use and consumption, they can support you in that. They can assess kind of where you're at with your use and if it is a big problem, and then connect you also up with either outpatient treatment or maybe even inpatient treatment sometimes. And unfortunately, there's a lack of resources with that. Like I know in Prince Albert, our brief and social detox is always very full, and it's very hard to get a bed there. But being connected with a worker definitely helps you kind of navigate getting into the things that you need to get into. So those are a couple thoughts on that. Again, not a huge area of expertise for me, but yeah, I've definitely had and have clients that have some struggles in those areas.
Yeah, no, those are great ideas. And also, I don't know, when I was younger, there used to be a lot of like A roundups and like eye dances. I don't
Hmm.
know that that's still a thing or if it's coming back, but I do agree with you. I feel like sobriety is becoming a movement almost. There's
Hmm.
a lot of people that are just deciding, I don't even want to be a social drinker. I don't want to have any alcohol. And I think good for you. I definitely am not judging anybody who wants to partake in any fun times and tasty libations, that sort of thing. But I do know that it can go the same way of like what we were talking about with food, that sometimes it can feel like, okay, maybe I've had a bit too much. I've been going to a few too many parties and I'm starting to feel the toll on my body. And so I do think it's good to be mindful of your approach to alcohol and your relationship with it. And if you feel like I'm sober all the time and I maybe have one or two drinks a month, and I mean, it sounds like you got it under control, you know?
Hmm.
But I do know that in that season of excess, it definitely can happen where you're starting to question, oh my gosh, I've drank so much this month, maybe I have an issue with with alcohol.
Hmm.
And so it's good to just to be mindful of it so that you know your limits, right?
Yeah, and when you're tracking like your body and your nervous system, you'll be more sensitive to notice like, oh, I actually feel like crap, or I'm hungover, or whatever it may be, right? Or having those two drinks actually, I woke up this morning and didn't feel as good as I normally would. So, yeah,
Mm,
I think that kind of circles back to that too when you're doing those, practicing those skills and learning those skills.
hmm. Absolutely.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if there's anything else that we haven't touched on, but
Hmm.
yeah, this would be
There's a few more things, yeah.
sure. Okay, yeah, let's
Okay.
go.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, just I want to speak a little bit to some of like the general challenges of the holiday season, which we've already, I think, touched on throughout, but just to give that a little more space. I think less routine and structure definitely happens. People often take time off work. I know, again, being around a lot of teachers, we always have like 2 weeks off of work for the holiday season. And I don't know if you've probably seen that meme where it's like a little stick figure being festive, and then the next one is like, it's like December 27th, and I don't know what day it is, and I'm full of cheese and like confused. So I think about that a lot and think of like how I that feeling like that, and it kind of ties back to you talking about like all the treats and stuff, and yeah, kind of that excess and the overconsumption. So that can really take a toll. I think it's good to take time off of our regular routine and our activities and things, but it can sometimes be disorienting. So trying to
Mm.
like orient yourself and stay in your body and stay with that sensation of what's happening in my body. How do I feel? What do I need? Um, so yeah, that's one
I really
piece.
like that.
Yeah.
I think, that makes me think about hatha. I always talk about hatha. That's the kind of yoga that I'm trained in. And when we practice the asana, it's not even just the asanas, but it's also the lifestyle that ha represents the sun and it's an active state. And Ta represents the moon and is a restful state. And so
Hmm.
we need balance in our life. There can be a lot going on, and then we also need to pause and reset because that helps with our natural rhythm and health. And so I think that's kind of what happens that often during the holidays. We're so used to that routine that you're talking about, and then suddenly we go to the extreme side of too much rest, too much
Hmm.
overindulgence, and we're starting to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm really craving routine now.
Yes. Yeah, balance. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
And yoga can really teach us
Mm.
that, right? As you say. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really
Mm.
lovely. Thank you for sharing that one, Jessica. Yeah, and then just like the busyness, of course, having all the holiday parties, gift exchanges are really popular. Maybe you're taking some time to volunteer. So all of that can really put demands on our system and um, lead to just feeling kind of stressed, which I guess comes back to like that idea of simplifying too. Holidays, again, yeah, can mean more alcohol flowing. Well, the other thing around that, it is a time where people tend to be more kind of joyful, happy, celebrating, friendly, even like people saying hello on the street more, things like that than normal. I think we're pretty good about doing that in Saskatchewan, but maybe even more so. And that can really affect our mental health because if you're struggling with grief or depression or suicide ideation or addictions or something, maybe you're not feeling those same festive vibes that everyone else is feeling, and you might feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me, or feeling kind of really more disconnected because you're not able to feel into that happiness that a lot of people are feeling. So,
Mm.
yeah.
To just recognize it, right? That
Hmm.
that it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And again, you're on your journey and whatever that looks like. Um, I was also thinking about the financial stresses of this time of year
Yes. Yes.
and how that can affect our mental health. I think there's a lot on social media of like living this certain lifestyle and having all these things and like influencers who are like promoting products and goods and so I think yeah, that is getting to be a lot. It's getting to be a lot of stress on people. And right now, the cost of living has gone up. It's harder for people to buy a home, things like that. Inflation is high. And with that in combination with like the pressure to have this certain lifestyle or certain financial means can be really stressful for people. And so that can mean maybe they're going without and again feeling like kind of not a part of things or like there's something wrong with them or they're not providing for their children maybe the way they want to. And then also it might lead to taking on more debt this time of year, which then those bills coming in January can be very stressful for people. And it's already a hard time of year then too. So yeah.
I think that's a really important point to touch on because I do think that the holidays can be a little bit too commercialized. And you're right, like there's a price tag for everything. And suddenly you're feeling that you need to meet a standard, keeping up with the Joneses. And we forget the reason that people are actually celebrating, the reason for the season, they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to recognize that maybe your gifts don't have to be financial. Maybe your gifts could be a gift of time, of energy, companionship. You can be doing nice things for your family and saying, you know what, I just can't really afford as much this year, but I still love you. And is there something else that I could do? Could I help you clean your garage? Could I help you in whatever ways that would be meaningful to you? Like I would like to gift you something, but I don't really have the finances or something like that. And I know that can be difficult. That can be difficult to even admit and to say it to somebody. But I think if you're honest and you keep perspective, the people around you are going to love you, whether you get them, something super expensive or something just really tiny and meaningful. You could bake them something.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that we could do if that is, your current situation. You shouldn't feel ashamed of it and feel that you need to go and get a loan or get into debt for people to know that you love them and appreciate them. That, if we think of like Gary Chapman and the five love languages, there's
Hmm.
5 ways to show your love, and it doesn't have to be just gifting, right? There's acts of service, there's quality time, there's words of affirmation, physical touch, so there's a lot of different ways that we could show love and appreciation. It doesn't have to come with a price tag.
I love the idea of like offering to do things. My son, it made me think of my son when he was little. He made me like a little coupon book of things. I don't think I ever redeemed them, but when I found them a couple of years ago, I was just like, oh, it was like cherished, you know?
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, great point. I love that. Yeah, like the non-monetary gifts that we can give and to make the season bright. The other thing I'd like to encourage, if people do have the means to, yeah, donate to, Salvation Army. There's always the people in the grocery stores. The other thing I usually donate to is my local schools. They always do Christmas hampers for families who don't have
Mm.
the means to maybe make the best Christmas for themselves. So that's how I like to do my donation around the season and just try to bring that spirit to someone else that maybe can't afford it. So if you do have the means,
Mm.
yeah.
I love that. That's a great reminder. Thanks for that.
Yeah. I think one other thing I want to say just about some of the general challenges being in the Northern Hemisphere and where we live. And, the days are very short. I've really noticed that in my practice because I have my same schedule every day, right? When I start at the time I start, the time I end. And by the time I'm ending my sessions, it's like dark out, and I have to like make sure I turn my lights on in the whole building because otherwise people leave the office and it's all dark. But just noticing that in the past couple of weeks and how that's affected people and their moods. So being aware of that, the shorter days, also the colder weather. So we had a huge cold snap just recently, some minus 40 and something, 44, I think it was one day with the wind. So the shorter days, the colder weather, and that means less time outside often. So, except for the really brave people. um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that can really affect our mental health, the sunlight, lack of sunlight, and lack of outside time, because nature is like a master regulator. It's one of the best ways to support your mental health is to get outside, get fresh air, get movement and exercise. And this time of year is almost like it's really difficult to do some of that sometimes. So recognizing that.
Mm. Really great point, especially like that, loss of vitamin D,
Hmm.
definitely. That's when people get that SAD, right? Seasonal affective disorder. And so it's important that we're figuring out ways that we can, and maybe that's taking vitamin D, maybe that's, going to a tanning bed. Some people do that. And then, and for others, yeah, like I guess we're going to have to figure out some indoor workouts if it's not
Hmm.
as easy to get outside. Although sometimes it's good to just even get out and just get a little bit of a lungful of cold air, a little bit of
Absolutely.
shoveling or something. Like I do think there's still some benefit to it as long as you're practicing doing that safely. You're not staying outside too long. You're not exposing your skin, that kind of thing. But I do think that, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like COVID times when we were just like stuck in our house and what do you do? Maybe do a physical challenge. I know I think I did like one of those forearm challenges during COVID where I did plank pose for to like 1 minute or how many minutes. And I was like, it was like there was a lot of fitness challenges. And I don't know, that might be something we have to bring back at this time of year when it is minus 40, just so we don't
Yeah.
go a little bit stir crazy, right?
Yeah. And yoga is always a good one for that. All we need is
Yep.
like not even a mat. You could use the floor or a blanket even. So yeah, and there's tons of videos on like YouTube, lots of free offerings. As I mentioned, during COVID, we made our studio into a recording studio. So we actually have a whole library of, um, I think there's 70 recordings of different types of classes and stuff. So, called the Bliss Library.
That's cool.
Yeah, so there's that too. Just yeah, yoga, but definitely I encourage people moving their bodies. And I do encourage getting outside again. Nature is a master regulator. It can really help us self-regulate and help us just feel better. And like you said, doing it, there's safe ways to do it. So even if you, in somatic experiencing, we talk about titrating. So titrating comes from chemistry. So it's like if you have two substances and you take one and just pour it into the other, it could be like a big explosion. But if you just put a little drop in at a time, then it can integrate. So we can think about titrating going outside. So like 5 minutes at a time or 10 minutes at a time. And just, yeah, getting some fresh air, getting maybe some, if there is sun, some sun on your face, that type of thing. So really important in this time of year to do as much as you can. But again, people are kind of scared of the cold sometimes, and rightfully so. It can be pretty harsh.
It can be. Yep, absolutely. But I don't know. I really love winter. I'm one of the
Mm-hmm.
weird, odd ducks out there that, I get excited when it's winter time, and I'm happy for the cold weather and the snow, and people always think I'm insane.
I actually do
But
too.
I've always been a winter girl.
Yeah, I actually do too. I love the seasons that we have here. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. We're blessed, right? We're
Yeah.
blessed to have such variety
Hmm.
in nature. Yeah,
Yeah.
that really it is a blessing.
Yeah.
But we still have to be safe about it. You're right.
Yeah. I had a couple more, I think we hit on a lot of them, but there's a couple more things I just want to mention about like kind of solutions and
Sure.
strategies. We talked about
Yeah.
a lot of them throughout, but um okay, extreme self-care. So I think that can really come in this time of year, especially when you're hurting, when you're suffering, when you're grieving. So maybe taking like an inventory of what's my best self-care practices that I can do. And again, it doesn't have to be big things. It could be as simple as, again, with the weather and the dryness, like maybe putting lotion on your skin might be something. Having a cup of tea, reading something. That's definitely cozy season. Like I have, like right now, I even have my heating pad, I have my blanket. I'm just getting all those like cozy things to really kind of lean into the season of winter and the holidays. But yeah, of course, self care is going to look different for everyone. But I think practicing that extreme self care can be a really good strategy to cope with everything going on and all the stressors.
I love that. And that to me is like speaks to like the healthy way to adjust to this time of year, but also to the stressors around us, and that is like a healthy coping mechanism so that we're not leaning too hard into anything else like stimulants or depressants, alcohol
Mm-hmm.
or marijuana or vaping or things that might introduce more toxins into our body. So it's good to think of what are some things that could soothe my nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then I think one of the last ones is therapy. Of course,
Mm.
that's really good medicine. I believe in it. I do it myself as a client. So don't be afraid to like reach out when you are struggling. There are supports out there. If you're Indigenous, there's non-insured health benefits that you get coverage to see someone, an approved provider. And there's a huge list of providers actually in Saskatchewan, so that's really good to see. Some communities there's more than others, but and of course there's public outpatient mental health outpatients in many communities, which all you need is your health card for that. And then lots of private practitioners. I feel like there's more of that happening lately too, and people who maybe have more of a specialty in something. But yeah, it's reaching out for help. There's no shame in that. It can be a real opportunity to get the support you need to work on some of the skills like the somatic skills and self-regulation skills, um, and just to be witnessed in your pain and your grief. So if you are suffering this holiday season, like you are loved, you are held, you matter and there is help. You don't have to go through it alone.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm.
My goodness, we have covered an awful lot, and I'm so grateful to you because I think this was beneficial even for myself
Mm.
just to go through this list and keep a lot of these things in mind as we approach the holiday season. But I'm excited for all the people who will tune in and maybe think of some things that they hadn't thought of before, and now they'll maybe have more resources or they'll be encouraged to look for more resources and I'm excited for that because I want all of us to have a season that it feels joyful but also supported too if we're not feeling super celebratory like mentioned and that could be totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shame in that, but how do we just take care of ourselves so that we can get through this holiday season and feel like we're getting ready for 2026 and we're feeling maybe a little bit more recharged and ready for that. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you, Celeste.
Yeah.
You are an angel. I have
Yeah.
appreciated you. And I hope I didn't cut you off again one more time from any of your brilliance.
No, this was lovely. Thank you, Jess. Thanks for having me. What I actually did think of one more resource though. Sorry, I want to add that in
Yeah,
because it's a
no,
big
for sure.
one
Bring it up.
for in Saskatchewan. If you are having trouble finding resources, there is a website. It's and I think maybe a phone number. I don't know, but it's 211. And that is just like a huge list of like that's categorized, and there's like therapists there. There's like food resources if you're struggling with that, addictions supports. Like it's a
Mm.
huge database of services all around the province. So I want to mention
That's
that.
a phone number,
I,
211.
I can't remember if it's a phone number as well, but it's definitely a website. I feel like it is a phone number because it's
Okay.
211, but it's
Okay.
definitely a website. So check out the website. If
Website.
it is
Okay.
a phone number, it'll say on there.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. No, that sounds like a treasure trove for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, thank you so much, my
Yeah.
dears. Hopefully we can help anybody who may be struggling through the holidays or maybe not. Maybe they just want to go through this podcast and remember all the things that they could do to take care of themselves and take care of others. So
Hmm.
thank you, my dear.
Thank
You
you,
are
Jess.
so sweet. I love you. You are so wonderful. I
Likewise.
appreciate you.
Likewise, dear. Thank you again for having me on the podcast. And yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity.
Mm. Well, you have a wonderful day and go and do some more self care.
Yes, you too.
Okay, awesome. Well, you take care and thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Jess.